Anti-apartheid activist and former PAC member Imam Achmad Cassiem has been described as a fearless leader. He was buried according to Islamic rites and laid to rest yesterday. Cassiem, a former Robben Island prisoner, passed away at the age of 77. Joining us now to pay tribute is Mogamad Ganief Ebrahim Hendricks, who is the president of Jama-ah. Mr. Hendricks, thank you for making time for us and condolences. This is someone you have worked with quite closely. How are you reflecting on the life of Imam Achmad Cassiem?
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you very much for the condolences. We need it because we've lost one of the greatest leaders of the Muslim community and also a great leader in South Africa and all over the world. Imam Achmad Cassiem, I met him, I started getting close with him when he started the Islamic Unity Convention, getting together over 300 Muslim organizations in South Africa, and I was elected as the public relations officer, and he led this particular initiative. The next year I became his vice chairman, his 2IC, and as you know, the 2IC does all the work. We just get the leadership from him. So we worked very, very close together, and one of the first things we worked on was, it was on the eve of the adoption of the Constitutional Assembly's work, where they were drafting a constitution, and we worked very closely together, clause by clause, to make representation to the Constitutional Assembly. And Imam Achmad Cassiem was very passionate about basic services like water, electricity, housing. And one of the recommendations we made was that people mustn't have access to water, they mustn't have access to housing, they mustn't have access to electricity, they must have a right to electricity, a right to water, a right to basic services. So we entered into a lot of debate with the leadership of the Constitutional Assembly, but you know, they stuck to their original proposal that people must have only access, and we can see now over 30 years the problems with electricity, the problems with water. People don't have water, and if in the early years it was a right to water, 30 years down the line we didn't have the problems we had today. Another matter that he was very passionate about was he wanted a difference between prisoners and political prisoners. And I think he was largely motivated by the fact that there were many APLA, PAC members in prison, and the court interpreted the activities as criminal activities while it was political activities. For example, when you rob a bank in order to fund a political party, is it a criminal activity or is it a revolutionary activity? So we made submissions that there should be a distinction between prisoners and political prisoners, without suggesting that political prisoners must get better benefits and privileges. I'm not sure what Imam Achmad Cassiem had in mind, but we put very strongly the case with a team of lawyers to justify that in the Constitution there should be a distinction between political prisoners and prisoners. So we worked very closely on the Constitution, and as his PRO and later on as his vice chairman, I largely had to drive the process. Imam Achmad Cassiem also felt that the airwaves need to be free, that over the years you find that people generally listen to radio, they can't afford TVs. So radio was a very important medium, and that's why at the first conference of the Islamic Unity Convention, they adopted a resolution that we should apply for a Dikasa license and get a community radio license.
Yeah.
And the job was given to Sheikh Sadullah Khan, who led the funeral services yesterday. And later on, it was passed on to myself, and I had to appear on before ICASA every year for 5 years before Radio 786 managed to get a community radio station license. I remember in those days we just raised about 30,000 rand, and today the revenue of a community radio station like Radio 786 is possibly 30 million rand a year.
Wow.
So that's how the radio station has grown. And listenership has grown, and it is recognized as one of the free radio stations in the world and one of the biggest community radio stations internationally. So Imam Achmad Cassiem also, at the same time, he was very passionate about young people, about feeding the poor. And as we speak, the day he died, or the weeks before it, or the months before it, he was feeding 3,000 people a day through the Mustad Feed Foundation. His wife was a director, and before she married him, he was the president of the Mustad Feed Foundation, who has fed so many people. So he was also concerned about these important things that people had to have a warm plate of food every day, and went on this massive project after he wrote the book, The Begging Bowl, where he explained the need that people should not go hungry. So Imam Achmad Cassiem was largely he was a teacher, and he was banned from teaching. And obviously when he was in prison, he couldn't teach. And so he also penned a few books which has tuned the revolutionary mind of so many activists. So that is how I know Imam Achmad Cassiem, but he was a workhorse. He served many organizations, and he was a resistance fighter since he was 15 years old. So my mom had a safe house in District 6 where Robben Islanders, the wives, came to live, because District 6 was close to the harbor, and I used to take the women to the harbor at 4 o'clock in the morning. So when Imam Achmad Cassiem was released I think it was in the 80s or 90s, I asked her about Imam Achmad Cassiem, and she said, yes, this young person, he was so young that they sent him to Robben Island. He was 17 years old, and when Mandela welcomed him, Mandela said, why are they arresting 17-year-olds and sending them to Robben Island? So he was personally welcomed by President Nelson Mandela, because that was the nature. President Mandela made sure, well, he wasn't president at that time, he made sure that he was the first to welcome any political prisoner that came to Robben Island. Yeah. So I asked my mom now, what did he do? My mom said, look, we read in the newspapers that he used a screwdriver to bomb power stations. So that's how she remembered him in those early days. But I'm sure it's not just a screwdriver, and that he may not have been actually involved in blowing up power stations. Yeah.
What legacy?
At the time.
Yeah, and given what you have just described to us about his commitment even to the struggle against apartheid, I mean, having joined the armed struggle at the age of 15, what legacy do you think he leaves behind, and what do you think young people and the future generation can learn from him?
Look, he's left behind hundreds of people, in fact thousands, who he interacted with, addressed conferences, went all over the country. So you find that he also ran ideological classes, which was packed with high school students, university students, academics, and many of them are walking Imam Achmad Cassiem's. I don't say I'm a walking Imam Achmad Cassiem because I can come nowhere to near his intellectual capacity and his passion and his commitment to freedom. But if you take me, for example, I was a kid in District 6. Now I'm a member of parliament. Now I'm running the city of Joburg. I'm the political head for the city of Joburg because my regional secretary is the executive mayor of the city of Joburg. So he has produced, through Kibra and through his personal classes that he held, leaders for South Africa, and you can find them in the army, you can find them in the treasury, you can find them in many other political organizations. And he was an ardent supporter of Robert Sobukwe. He used to quote Robert Sobukwe at every occasion. He would find some way to speak about Robert Sobukwe. I am busy publishing a book on Robert Sobukwe with Christine Kunta, and I now realize what an important role Robert Sobukwe played in South Africa and how Robert Sobukwe's ideas influenced Imam Achmad Cassiem, going through the original documents that the family gave us to use for the book that we're going to publish on Robert Sobukwe. So look, so he was also influenced by Imam Khomeini. In the 70s, after the Iranian Revolution, Imam Achmad Cassiem was living in Cape Town. He was disillusioned with the Muslim leadership, with the Imams, with the Sheikh, the Maulanas. They were in bed with the apartheid regime. And so he didn't have any icons or role models that he could base his philosophy on, his resistance, passion on. And when Imam Khomeini emerged and he started reading about it, he shared this with members of the PAC. And in the trenches, when we were ducking bullets, people used to ask, not him, but those associated with him, who is Imam Khomeini? Because they read about how, Imam Khomeini managed to get the Americans out of Iran, and how he gave leadership to the Iranian people for their freedom, and activists, ANC.
Mr. Hendricks,
they all wanted to know about.
Mr. Hendricks, I'm afraid we have to leave it there. We were struggling a little bit there towards the end with the connection, but thank you for making time for us.